Hello, trade professionals, or not trade professionals. We're open to everyone listening to our podcast. But hello, everyone, right? It's a Monday, hopefully for you, which would be awesome. We're here in the studio, virtual studio. My name's Annik. I'm here with Lalo. We're missing Andy today. So sorry. But it's just us two. You'll just have to hang with us.
Yeah, so Andy's on his in the process of moving cities. I don't know if y'all saw his LinkedIn post, but he's just got a job in a different city. So he's moving from Memphis to Searcy, Arkansas, and he is literally probably in the middle of the road right now doing that. So it's just Annik and I, like Annik said. So.
Yeah, great things. So you'll just have to be with us to stick around, okay? I'm so sorry. But we have some very interesting articles for you to kind of discuss. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say that does not affect his appearances here on the podcast. By the way, he'll still be contributing. So it's just today he had to move.
Don't worry. You haven't seen the last of Andy yet.
Or worry. It depends, right?
Yeah,
don't worry or worry.
or worry. But we do have some really good articles for you that we'll discuss, just talk about, to update you, to let you know. And obviously, if you want to dive deeper into these articles, you can find them under our podcast in the notes, or you can also contact us if you really want to deep dive and want someone else to talk on this, like a professional in that area. Please contact us if you need any additional information. But for now, we're just gonna kind of go through them, let you know what's going on, and you can take it from there. So our first article is U.S. supply chains are being threatened by Canadian rail shutdown. Obviously, I saw that headline, or we both saw it, and we're like, okay, this has to be in our roundup, just because, if supply chain is being threatened, it's going to end up on the Simply Trade podcast. So the ongoing labor dispute in the Canadian rail sector has resulted in significant shutdown of freight traffic on key railways, posing a serious threat to supply chains in North America. As nearly 9,300 workers from Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City face a lockout due to contentious negotiations over working conditions. The transportation of essential commodities like grains, coal, and timber is at risk right now. So if you're in those sectors, I suppose you probably already know of this, or you don't. Hopefully you do. What does this mean, Lalo? So when we're reading this article, it seems like there really is some sort of threat to our supply chains. But how real is this, and how threatening is this to the supply chains, you think?
It is a real big threat, but I'll provide an update, but I'll still talk about what would have happened. Okay, but as of late yesterday, the Canadian government issued a pretty much, okay, so the two rail lines, which is CPKC, like you said, I'm just going to say the acronyms or the letters because, and then CN, CN and CPKC. So the government issued a what is called, or they asked the Canadian industry. Okay, so this is also a long name. The Canada Industrial Relations Board, CIRB. So they asked them to issue a back to work order, which pretty much basically means the strike is over. Okay, so of course the Teamsters, who are behind the union, who is behind the rail workers, went ahead and filed yet another strike notice for the CN workers starting this Monday. Again, so the drama continues, I guess, and the everything will continue to evolve. But as of today, they should have been back to work. Okay, so today meaning when we're recording this. This is Friday. And so by the time you hear this, it'll be Monday and we may be back on strike again. So I'm sorry for all this confusion and everything. So August 23rd, they're back to work. And August 26th is when CN is threatening to walk out again and strike. Okay. So let's go back on what could happen, because again, it could still be a strike, or what may have happened had the strike happened, right? So let's talk about comparisons to the last strike that happened before, and that was in 2020. They were on strike for 8 days, and the economy in Canada suffered an estimated $1 billion in losses. So this was back in 2020. Remember, this is 24 years ago. So these days, it's a lot more. And remember, back in 2020, we also did not depend a lot, or as much as we do now, on things like, for example, just mail order stuff, right? We order so much now. Our economy and our consumers, us as consumers, depend so much on just mail order, the Amazons, the Etsy's, you name it, they're all there, right? And of course, all of that depends on our logistics and our rail system, our trucking system, et cetera. So yeah, so that's what's been going on right now.
Wow. Well, I guess so. We'll have to keep up. Like, this is an ongoing story, so this might end up back in our podcast next week. Who knows? Or we'll give you a short little update. Or the best thing is you keep up with these news every day, because it's probably going to affect your supply chain.
It is, yes.
Okay.
It's definitely something they should look at. So everybody should be looking at. So
yeah. So take that for our first article. Starting off great. Second article, we have okay, how do you say that? Do you say AUKUS? Do you actually say that? AUKUS? Or AUKUS?
That's an acronym, like NAFTA or USMCA. I don't like, people say USMCA, you say use MACA, but that does just not make sense. Just call it USMCA.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, but yes, it's the same thing here. It's what you're talking about. Yes.
So, which is Australia, the UK, and the US. So these countries have introduced groundbreaking, they say, generational legislative reforms to remove licensing requirements for defense exports between the countries, which is effective from 1st September in 2024. So we're like a week away, technically. And basically, the strategic move aims to bolster scientific, technological, and industrial collaboration while streamlining trade processes, paving the way for a swifter deployment of advanced capabilities to bolster the Australian Defence Force. How big is this in the United States, or how much of an impact does this make to the United States, do you think? Or is this any really impact?
Well, it seems like it's more
geared to
Australia, correct? Yeah, and of course it's a big impact and a positive one, in the sense that it's going to reshape the global defense industry for Australia. And so they're.
So one thing it does mention is that approximately 900 export permits previously required for trade between Australia, the US, and the UK will be scrapped, which is an estimated annual value of $5 billion. So I feel like that does make a little bit of a difference too already.
Yeah, it does. And because of that, it's just going to streamline more of how Australian businesses, now and in the future, of course, because there's going to be growth now, because of that. And, there's just been removing all these bureaucratic hurdles. They'll keep on seeing more innovation, so that's a good thing, right? Because these are gone, now there's going to be more innovation, meaning like now there'll be more opportunities within the country of Australia without having to depend on or having to go outside the country to, let's say, scientists or engineers or you name it. that may leave because they want to practice or learn or grow, outside of their country. Now this is providing opportunities for them.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I thought even though it is mostly affecting Australia, I feel like with all those countries, with those 3 countries, it kind of does make things a little bit easier to trade maybe with Australia, or to have a certain relationship with these countries is what I'm saying.
And well, here's the numbers, I guess, just for the trade geeks and for everybody that is following this a little more carefully. So here are the numbers: like 70% of exports from the US to Australia under ITAR will now be license free. 70%. That's a big number. More than 80% of the US to Australia trade under the EAR, under the Export Administration Regulations, will also be license free. Again, 80%, big number.
If anyone is doing business with those countries, or, maybe they see a different opportunity now, or like, if they have already these relationships, maybe, this rule is, or what do they call it? This legislative reform helps them in any way, so that it's kind of a nice thing to know or to look into if, you do want to have better trade relationships with a country.
Yeah, and it makes it easier for, let's talk about small businesses that are in that area that never exported, because let's say in Australia, or American and UK companies exporting to Australia, let's just say, small businesses that were unable to do that. Because, I mean, let's face it, it is challenging, and there a lot of work to do ITAR and EAR and or both, So in this case, because they're removed now, that gives them an opportunity to even grow more. So we're going to see a lot more cross-border traffic and collaborations, because of this. So, yep.
Good. That's good. Good to know. Coming from a really good relationship, or like a new great relationship happening, hopefully, we're moving a little bit towards the other side, which obviously I hope you guessed right. It's China. So China has a recent announcement of export restrictions on antimony, a crucial mineral used in defense and electronic industries, which poses a significant concern for U.S. national security. So the U.S. has limited domestic reserves of antimony and relies heavily on Chinese imports. To secure the antimony supply chain, the U.S. must explore alternative sources in countries like, Tajikistan, I can barely pronounce that, and Australia. So this is funny. We just heard Australia, we just heard the relationships are kind of getting better. So that's a good thing. But obviously, this, like, they really do have to focus now on those good relationships, because this bad relationship is getting worse. And now I don't know. I mean, this sounds pretty terrible to me, and it sounds like kind of a threat also to the United States, because China is kind of keeping all their resources to themselves. And we don't know what they're doing with it. And, as the United States, we kind of rely on those as well.
Right. No, I agree. It's just, again, one of those things that we talked about before is, and we seem to have a new story coming out almost weekly about China and the US, or China and the EU, China and the rest of the world, and or China aligning themselves with like a Russia or a North Korea, et cetera. It's just ways of kind of like this tit for tat, kind of like, you do this to me, I'm going to do that to you. I'm going to restrict you from this and that. But yes, just to reiterate, so this article came from it's actually from a group that had studied this very carefully. So check for our newsletter that we publish on LinkedIn, so that you can get the source of this newsletter. But it goes into very deeply as to why this is happening, or who is doing this, just the history behind it. I mean, we don't have enough time in this show to even go over all that, but it's very interesting to see. And in general, it's just we are going to need to depend a lot more, like you said, on those other two countries, like you said, Australia, and I wish I can remember the other country, but anyway, so yes, and so we'll need to do that because it is critical for us, for the defense industry, again, defense, to have that mineral, available for us. And unfortunately, right now, China pretty much has the dominance of that mineral, that whether it's because of the resources that they have or just because they're the only ones that decided to mine it or to, to process it and make it useful for the market. So again, not exactly sure why the article doesn't say that, but yeah, that's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah. So I guess if you are in that industry, that's a whole redirection you have to do. I mean, there's a lot of rerouting and there's a lot of, how do you say,
supply chains
research.
are going to need to change. Yeah. Research.
You
and
need to research.
Exactly.
You need to get into probably compliance again. What can you do? What do you have to do? So look into that. And if you need compliance, obviously Global Training Center is here for you. Reach out to us. See if we can help you in any way, especially also if you need your company trained in this, it goes hand in hand with forced labor. If you need your entire company trained with forced labor, you can get our trade experts, get them to your facility or online, and they can all be trained and you guys can all be at the same page and, understand it on a better level. But yeah, so that's our last article. But you know what? It doesn't end there because I have a fun fact for you. Our fun fact of the day is, so first off, I'm going to tell you a little thing that honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egypt, in Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible. So that's crazy. Probably wouldn't eat that though. But that brought me to, so I saw that fact. And so that brought me, who has the most exports of honey? I did not think this was going to be, the country, but do you have an idea?
Wow. No.
Yeah, it's New Zealand. And actually New Zealand is first. So New Zealand is the country with the highest dollar value of honey exports in 2021. That's the only facts I could find from 2021, capping a $327 million US dollars, nearly 12% of all natural honey distributed. That's crazy. And the second I see here on the list is China. So, hopefully they don't cut us off of honey. That would be bad because I really like honey.
Yeah.
So let's keep good ties. Okay. Just kidding. We'll have to, we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, that's my fun fact of the day. And these are articles
so believe it or not, this week, Simply Trade celebrated its second anniversary. So we're 2 years old this week. So
I
220 shows.
Oh my God.
Yeah. 220 shows and 2 years old. So anyway, thank you
awesome.
all for listening and keeping us around. So we hope to make quite a few more changes and additions, but thank you all for your support. Just like us, share us, subscribe to us, and all that kind of good stuff. But even comment, tell us what we're doing wrong. We want to hear not only the good, but also the bad. So thank you all. But
give us some positive criticism. Very demure, very, very considerate, very, very mindful. Be very mindful. I don't know if you guys get it, but it's a trend. Actually, the White House used this trend recently, which was funny. So that's how I know whoever's listening, it's not just my generation that knows this trend because the White House is posting it too. So you should have to know it too. It's funny. Anyways, go look it up if you're really confused. But now to wrap it up. So these were our articles for the week. Hopefully they meant something or you can use them in your work or, you just enjoyed listening, maybe. And yeah, that's really it. We hope you have a wonderful week, or whenever you're listening to it, weekend, whatever it is. And we will see you back next Monday. Thank you so much, Lalo, and have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.